This weekend I'm taking 4 different Club Europe flights with British Airways. It should give me a great opportunity to try out all the different food that they offer and see how consistent that service is, to ultimately help you decide if it's worth paying for the upgrade or not. Along the way, I'll make sure to also check out all of the Terminal 5 business class lounges so you can decide which one you want to spend your time in if you do decide to fly with BA. But first up, I need to get myself over to Newcastle Airport so I can get some food from that lounge before my flight down to Heathrow this evening. After arriving at the airport, I made my way through departures and past the check-in desks. The main queue was looking quite busy, although there didn't seem to be anyone in the priority line. I was travelling with carry-on only this weekend, so I just made my way straight through the fast-track security, which was lovely and quick. And once through, I made my way directly to the lounge to grab some dinner. BA uses the Aspire Lounge in Newcastle, and it has been recently upgraded. It's a much nicer space than before, but the food is lacking a bit. The pasta I had here was flavourless mush, to be honest, but the snacks that they had on the side were still decent, and I was able to get some drinks from the free pour spirits. Overall though, it's a nice space to spend a couple of hours. Our flight was running a bit late, and the lounge is supposed to close at 8 PM, but they did keep it open till 8:30 for us until it was time for us to board. Our aircraft this evening was quite a dated A319. Business class is configured in a 2-2 with a tray table in the seat in between you. The seat had definitely seen better days and the padding was quite hard. For this first flight I was in seat 1F. The front row is usually blocked out for those with gold status. I'm just a lowly silver at the moment, but I was able to book this at check-in because no one else had taken it. The tray table next to us was a useful place to put things, and there were individual air vents and reading lights above. The main tray table for us in the first row was very unusual on this plane. I've never seen anything like it. It had a fabric toggle to unlock it, and then it hit my knees when it came down, and it extends quite far, which is good. But yeah, I think that design definitely helps to demonstrate the age of this plane. One thing I did notice as well is we hadn't been handed a menu for our meals. It can be a bit hit or miss whether a BA actually hand out the menus in Club Europe. And I will say, on all 4 flights that I took this weekend, I didn't get a single menu. Once we were at altitude, the onboard service started. It's a very quick flight this, just about 45 minutes flight time, so they do have to be very quick with it. After greeting me by name, they gave me the 2 options, which were a beef salad and a veggie salad. I opted for the beef, which was absolutely delicious. The bread roll it was served with wasn't the best, it was pretty solid, and the dessert was also really nice too. As soon as I'd finished the meal, my tray was cleared. And the second my gin and tonic was finished, I was immediately offered another one. And then as we were coming into land, I was offered another in a plastic cup so that I could keep going. Because of the delay, I hadn't been in the best moods when I first boarded the plane, and I think that was true of quite a few people, but I've got to say the crew did brilliantly to win everyone around. They were super friendly the entire time, they welcomed us all by name, really good service throughout, and anytime anyone was getting low on a drink, they were straight round to top them up. On such a short journey, they really did go out of their way to make sure that everyone got brilliant service and left impressed, so getting this weekend's trip off to a brilliant start. We parked up at a remote stand, got off the steps and onto the bus. Thankfully it was quite a quick ride over to the terminal. It was getting on for about 10:30 at this point, and my next flight was due to go the following morning at 6:30 AM. So I made my way over to the Moxie at Heathrow Airport, which is a pretty nice space really. Overall, that first flight was pretty good. Obviously it was delayed by an hour, which wasn't ideal, but we made up a lot of that time in the air, so we didn't end up landing that much later than we were supposed to do anyway. And the service on board was some of the best I've had with BA for ages. I was greeted by name when I first got on board. They were super attentive. Anytime someone finished a drink, they were straight over there offering them another one. Even up until the plane was due to land, they were still topping people up. But anyway, that's enough about that flight. I'm going to get to bed, get some sleep, and I'll see you in the morning. I was up bright and early, about 4 AM, and checked out of the hotel to make my way over to the airport. Thankfully there's a bus outside the Moxie that does go directly to the airport in about 25 minutes. But to be honest, for a flight this early I really would recommend staying somewhere a bit closer like the Sofitel if you can. Entering Terminal 5, the business class check-in is over to the left, but I made my way straight through to the security as I had no check bags. Security took ages, even in fast track. I don't know what was going on that morning. So I did something I'd never usually do and went to the North Lounge. Because of its proximity to security, it's the lounge that most people see first, so if you don't know anything about the other lounges, most people tend to go there, which is why it gets so busy. But thankfully this early in the morning it was pretty quiet. I was able to get myself a good breakfast, full English, followed up with a pain au chocolat and a coffee. Made a quick trip to the toilets. There's nothing fancy in here. The soap itself is nice from Elemis, but yeah, the toilets seem a bit clinical really. The boards announced we would be departing from the B gates, so I was a bit gutted at myself that I'd not gone to the B gates lounge because it does tend to be a much nicer place. To get across the B gates, there is a train that will take you there, but I do always prefer to take the tunnel. It doesn't take a huge amount longer than getting the train, and it's just nice to get my steps in. Anytime I'm going to be sat around on a plane, probably having a few drinks and eating a lot, it's just nice to get a bit more exercise in when I can really. The gate area was looking pretty quiet as the sun was starting to come up. Not too many people around, so it seemed like for once we might not have a full flight on our hands, which was looking pretty positive. And they didn't keep us waiting for too long before it was time to board either. Thankfully our plane this morning is a more modern A320. Configuration and basic layout in business class is the same as last night, however the seat padding is much more comfy, but no tray table underneath the seats today. I did notice I did have barely any legroom in this. I'm not sure why, it was very tight. And being a more modern plane though, it did feature Wi-Fi and there was power underneath the seat. And the seat's headrest on this one is fully adjustable as well, which is pretty good for a short haul aircraft. The most exciting thing though was there was no one coming to sit next to me. Given the lack of knee room, it made a huge difference to be able to turn to the side and not need to worry about encroaching on anyone else's space. Above the seat, individual air vents and reading lights. And we were on our way for an on-time departure. It seems a rare thing from Heathrow these days, so I find myself really celebrating when it happens, but I have found more often than not recently they have been on time. But, there would be some more delays before the end of this weekend. There were some lovely views for takeoff this morning, setting off just after sunrise. Everything looked lovely. I connected to the Wi-Fi once we got in the air, and I was quite surprised to see that they were offering free messaging. Previously you had to pay I think £2 or £3 for this. It cost more for full Wi-Fi, but the messaging itself is usually £2 to £3. And this was offered on all the flights this weekend that had Wi-Fi. Not sure if this is a new policy or if it's just on certain routes, but it was definitely appreciated. I started out my flight watching season 2 of The Bear. Now my flight this morning was to Copenhagen, and completely coincidentally the episode I got up to happened to feature Copenhagen extensively. The meal service started pretty quickly and I went for the full English. I can't remember what the other option was, to be honest. And I accompanied this with a glass of champagne and some orange juice. And shortly after serving this, the crew came around with some pastries, so I grabbed a croissant. The Club Europe breakfast is a bit disappointing. I did have the sausage, but most of the rest of it was pretty inedible. The dessert bits are good though, like the croissant, having that with some jam. But I didn't make too much of a dent in it. If you do have a morning flight, I'd definitely say make sure you fill up in the lounge beforehand. Checking out the bathroom, it's your standard short haul airplane bathroom, nothing too much to call out other than the White Company soaps. And then I made my way back to the seat and had a really comfy time for the rest of the trip. With no one next to me, I got the armrests up, stretched out my legs, and watched a few shows on my tablet while sipping my drink. The crew on this flight were really good, and they weren't quite up to the standards of last flight, so there was no greeting by name or anything, but they were very attentive. As soon as my drink was finished, they were offering to get another one. I decided not to in this case. But still, very friendly throughout, and did a good job. It was a 2-hour flight time, but it did just absolutely fly by. I was really comfortable the whole time. The food had been a bit disappointing, but I was happy enough, just sat sipping my drink, watching my shows, and got some incredible views as we were coming in to land into Copenhagen. Once on the ground, we were very quickly off the plane. Through immigration was no time at all as well, and I decided to hop on the metro to just go into Copenhagen. It's a really beautiful city, just to walk around as well. There's some amazing sights. If you haven't been to Copenhagen before, I highly recommend it. And the following day, I was back at the airport again and heading over to the Eventia Lounge. The Eventia Lounge is a nice open space with lots of natural light from the big windows that overlook the tarmac. I grabbed myself a nice turkey paprika meal thing, had a drink and looked out the windows. I spotted our plane arriving, and it's always reassuring when it's arriving near the lounge. You don't have too far to walk to find it, so you can stay in the lounge a little bit longer before you go to board. Unfortunately though, I did still end up waiting around the gate for quite some time. The pilot actually came out to the gate to warn us of a mechanical fault, which he wasn't sure if they were going to be able to fix, but thankfully they did manage to get it sorted in the end, and about an hour late we managed to get on board. I was back on an A320 for this one, but it was quite a unique business class layout. Because BA have the availability to vary the number of rows that are used for business class, they'd actually extended it all the way to the exit row. Although it would mean I was quite a bit further back for the onboard service, I decided to go for this because you don't get a lot of space in business class. Unless you're in the front row, you actually get less space in business class usually than you do in economy in the exit row, so being able to combine those two seats, still have the exit row whilst getting the business class service felt like the best choice to me. Once again, there were no menus, but BA was serving their afternoon tea, so the only options were meat or veggie. I went for the meat options, which was coronation chicken, salmon, and I'm not sure what the thing on the left was. Again, not having the menu, can't remember what that was. It was all tasty enough though, and I finished off with a nice warm scone, which I of course ate the correct way with the cream first. It took them quite a long time to get over to us for the drink service. I decided to go for a glass of champagne, but it was the flattest champagne I've ever had. I'm sure this probably wouldn't have been the case, but it felt like it had been opened for a week. It was really flat and flavourless. I really regretted getting it and I didn't finish it. The flight was definitely the weakest for service. There were obviously a lot more people on board that one, but I was comfortable enough. Upon landing at Heathrow, I made my way through immigration and security and I had a look at the boards which were showing that the B Gates lounge was nice and quiet, so I decided to head over here to relax. The B Gates lounge is usually the quietest, so it's one of the best places to come and just chill out. Even though it hadn't been too long since my afternoon tea, I did decide to get some food here, grabbing a pie, mash, some veg and gravy. I didn't stay in this lounge for too long. I did realise that my next flight would be departing from the A gates, the Newcastle flight always is. So I decided to relocate over to the South Lounge at the A gates, just to see out the rest of my time in Heathrow from there. The south side of the lounge does have some runway views, but most of the area doesn't have any natural light. It was very crowded in there as well, so I didn't film too much, and I wasn't there for too long, just grabbed some cheese and biscuits. I have featured that lounge on quite a few of my other videos, so feel free to check those out if you do want to see a bit more of the lounge. The final flight over to Newcastle, it had showed as being delayed, but we ended up making up most of that time. Back on an A320, and it was just the standard seat for this one. Once again I was in row 2, which I had been on the flight over to Copenhagen initially, but for this one for some reason the legroom was absolutely fine. I'm not sure what was going on with that other one. The meal was once again that delicious beef salad, and this time came with a lovely chocolate mousse to finish off. Not a huge amount to call out on this flight, it was pretty standard to be honest. Nothing exceptional in terms of service, but no fun to complain about either. So yeah, overall, all the flights were quite different experiences. I found the seat in each situation, even though it should just be your basic seat, it was different each time. The service ranged from okay to exceptional, and the food quality also varied quite a bit too. Hopefully you found this video useful to give you an idea of what that short-haul business class experience is like, and if you want to see how that compares to the economy experience, watch this video next.